أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ثم الصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه الأخيار أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الفصل التاسع في التوصل بالنبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. Chapter 9 in seeking intercession with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Imam Busiri in this chapter gives us a highlight of his life as a poet before starting to praise Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He used to praise kings, do poetry like just anybody on the street doing poetry, serving kings and sweet talking them in his poetry for something, for livelihood. And then he came to realize that that is not so helpful. That is following the dunya instead of seeking your akhirah. So Imam Busiri takes us through an episode of that past time, and he brings us back into his madh of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he says, خدمته بمديح أستقيل به ذنوب عمر مضى في الشعر والخدم. He says, خدمته, I served Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, بمديح, with praises, أستقيل به, I أطلب السماح به, I'm seeking pardon with these praises of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Pardon from what? Then he says, ذنوب عمر مضى, the sins of ages that have passed. Yani my life that have passed, the sins I committed in there, I use this madh of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to seek pardon. مضى في ماذا? أي مضى في الشعر والخدم, the sins that have passed in the previous poetry that he has done. He did any other poetry like praising anybody that is not worth it, anybody that is worth it. He's just praising randomly for worldly favors. Then he says wal khidami, and also the khidmah that he did for people, particularly those in authority, the kings, the sultans, praising them just for something to touch his mouth. So all that he says, the sins that were committed in that, the shortfalls, he is using the madih of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to seek pardon for all those errors that he did. What did ash-shi'r wal-khidam has to do with sins? He is going to qualify it. He says, إِذْ قَلَّدَانِي مَا تُخْشَى أَوَاقِبُهُ إِذْ قَلَّدَانِي مَا تُخْشَى أَوَاقِبُهُ كَأَنِّي بِهِمَا هَدْيٌ مِنَ النَّعَمِ. He says, إِذْ, as قَلَّدَانِي, the two of them, they made a chain in my neck. Or he says, قَلَّدَهُ الشَّيْء بِمَعنى صَارَ كَالْقِلَادَةِ في عنقه. The thing becomes like a necklace on his neck. قلداني بمعنى جعلوا القلادة في عنقي. So what is the قلداني? We can see that it is dua, the alif al-ithnain is there, referring to what and what? الشعر والخدم. أي إذ قلداني. So we can say إذ قلدني الشعر والخدم ما تخشى أواقبه. Awaqib is the jamu of aqiba, yani the ending of something. So he says that anything that is bad, its ending is feared, like lies, being promiscuous, doing any bad attitude. Of course, it will end you in bad ending. And so any of those things is ma tukhsha awaqibuhu, anything that its ending is feared. So he says that these two things, ash-shi'r wal-khidami, they made a necklace of a lot of things that the ending of which is feared in my neck. Yani they made me pick up a lot of bad things. He says, with this, كَأَنِّي بِهِمَا هَدْيٌ مِنَ النَّعَمِ, I looked with the necklace that is put on my neck, I became like with these two, بِهِمَا, I بِالشِّعْرِ وَالْخِدَمِ, I became like hadyun. And hadyun is a sacrificial animal when people do hajj in the haram. The sacrificial animal for the haram, they call it hadi. And the hadi min al-na'ami, it could be a camel, a sheep, or a bakar, and there is a cow. So it says hadiyun min al-na'ami, and a sacrificial animal from any of these species of animals. Due to the hadi, it is known that a tag is placed on the neck of the hadi to identify it as this being the sacrificial animal for the hujjaj or the haram. And so he says that due to what the necklace that the khidam and shi'r put on my neck, I look like this hadi with its tag on its neck. Then he says, أطعت غي الصبا في الحالتين وما حصلت إلا على الآثام والندم. Says أطعت, I followed. غي, misguidance. I ضلال. أطعت غي الصبا. الصبا بمعنى childhood. Childhood, not really childhood, but childishness. You can be grown by doing childish stuff. I followed the misguidance of childish stuff. في الحالتين, in these two cases of الشعر والخدمة. وما حصلت إلا على, I did not obtain except الآثام, sins, والندم, and regret. I obtained just these two, nothing important. And then he says, فَيَا خَسَارَةَ نَفْسٍ, how heavy is the loss of a soul. في تجارتها, in its trade, لم تشتري الدين بالدنيا, it did not use the world to buy its hereafter. وَلَمْ تَصُمِ, it did not even request to buy the hereafter. Because when we say tasumi, it is from the verb sama yasumu, sum, tasum. Tasumu, then you say lam tasum. So it's lam tasum, ay hazihi nafs lam tasum. It didn't even attempt to buy it. When we say sama bimana talabu shira. When we say sama sil'ata bimana talaba thamanaha liyashtariyaha. He requested for his price to buy it. Now when we say sama al-ba'i'u al-bida'ata, the seller, sama al-bida'ata, then we now say the seller presented his goods and gave price to it. So when the seller presents his goods and gives it a price, that is also sama. So we call that also as-sawm. And then when the seller, the buyer, also requests for the price of something to buy it, it's also as-sawm. So based on the context. So when he says walam tasumi, ay lam tatlubu shira'a ad-dina. Lam tatlubu hatta lam tatlub. He didn't buy, he didn't even request to buy. So his nafs was lost those times that he used to just praise the kings and be gaining something from them. And then he says, woman yabi'in ajilan. I almost forgot something very important. In the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, there is this hadith where he says, لا يخطب أحدكم على خطبة أخيه. None of you should propose to the betrothed of his brother. When your brother goes to propose to a woman officially, you shouldn't also go putting your proposal on top of that. In that hadith, the continuation tells us, وَلَا يَصُومُ أَحَدُكُمْ عَلَى صَوْمِ أَخِيهِ. Also, when one of you proposes to buy something, let not the other also come to propose. So the qaida is very beautiful that when somebody goes to betroth a woman, don't go also trying to propose to her. Also, when somebody presents to buy something, don't also overtake the person in buying it. So just for us to see the practical use of our word, sama yasumu. Jamil. And then he says, وَمَنْ يَبِعْ عَاجِلًا مِنْهُ بِعَاجِلِهِ يَبِنْ لَهُ الْغَبْنُ فِي بَيْعٍ وَفِي سَلَمٍ. He says, whoever sells عَاجِلًا مِنْهُ بِعَاجِلِهِ, whoever sells the later to come, the thing to come later with what is here now. So they have a qaida when the verb is bay, ba'a yabi'u, bay. They says that al-ba'u fi hayyiz al-bay'i tadkhulu ala al-ma'khuz. When you are doing bay, you say bi'tu haza bihaza. The one that the bi attaches to, that is the one you took. So وَمَنْ يَبِعْ عَاجِلًا مِنْهُ بِعَاجِلِهِ, yani bi'ajil, you took the ajil, the one that is quick, right now, fast money. You sold ajilan, the one that is to come later, which is the hereafter. You sold it and took the one that is here now. And he says, whoever does that, وَمَنْ يَبِعْ عَاجِلًا مِنْهُ بِعَاجِلِهِ, whoever does this kind of trade, يَبِنْ لَهُ يَتَبَيَّنْ لَهُ أَوْ يَظْهَرُ لَهُ, it becomes apparent for him. يَبِنْ لَهُ الْغَبْنُ, غَبْنُ بِمَعنَى نَقْصٌ وَخَسَارَةٌ, a shortfall, and also khasara, a loss. Like me saying, oh, I'm going to get something, my container is going to come, give me 50 cedis for it, give me 100 cedis for it. The container will come, and now you see that the container is containing Benz, containing G-Wagon. So how did I do that trade? You've sold for something quick, to get some quick money. You sold something that would have come later if you were patient, to get a heavy money. You sold it quick to lose. So he says, whoever does that trade, يَبِنْ لَهُ الْغَبْنُ, he now experiences نَقْصٌ وَخَسَارَ, shortfall and loss, فِي بَيْءٍ, in his trade, وَفِي سَلَمِ, and also salam is also a mustalah in tijara, fiqh tijara. The salam is a kind of buy where you sell something to come later now. So you say that, oh, I would have this, I would have 2 sacks of rice, so give me 10 cedis. When the 2 sacks come, you take it. We call it salam. They say that بَيْعُ شَيْءٍ مَوْصُوفٍ فِي الذِّمَّةِ بِثَمَنٍ عَاجِلٍ, something that you describe that I'll get this, and then you sell it with a price now, quickly. So whoever does that kind of trade, يَبِنْ لَهُ الْغَبْنُ فِي بَيْءٍ وَفِي سَلَمٍ, you get this kind of, you realize al-ghabnu in the trade that you do, the loss that you would have. And then he says, in ati zamban fama ahdi bimuntaqisin minan nabiyyi wala habli bimunsarimi. He said, if I commit a sin, in ati zamban, if I commit a sin, fama ahdi, my covenant with Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, غير منتقص, أي أهدي برسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم غير منتقص, it is not nullified. Say منتقص بمعنى باطل, it is not nullified. If I commit a sin, it doesn't nullify my covenant with Rasulullah صلى الله عليه وسلم. ولا حبلي, حبل بمعنى وصلي, my connection with Rasulullah صلى الله عليه وسلم, it is also غير منصرم, it is also not munqata. صارما I remember صارما وصل الغواني واعتزل ذكر الأغاني وارمي بالبيد الحصاني وصل مختوم الدناني. صارما بمعنى to severe, to cut, to قطع. So he says من النبي ولا حبلي بمنصرم, my connection with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is also not cut. It's also not cut. We are still connected. Says فَإِنَّ لِي ذِمَّةً مِنْهُ بِتَسْمِيَةِ مُحَمَّدًا وَهُوَ أَوْفَى الْخَلْقِ بِالذِّمَمِ. Says that is because that I have a guarantee, dhimma. I have a guarantee from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Why? بِتَسْمِيَةِ أي باء التعليلية, بِتَسْمِيَةِ أو السببية, بِتَسْمِيَةِ, by me being named Muhammadan, because Imam Busiri is called Muhammad. In our lessons, I think we mentioned that he's called Muhammad al-Busiri. And so he says that due to my being named Muhammad, I have zimma, I have guarantee from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, huwa awfa al-khalqi bi-dhimami, he is the most fulfilling of all assurances that he gives people. He is the best to fulfill assurances. Says إن لم يكن في معادي آخذا بيدي فضلا وإلا فقل يا زلة القدم. Says إن لم يكن, أي إن لم يكن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم في معادي آخذا بيدي, in my return to Allah, معادي, in my return to Allah, if Rasulullah صلى الله عليه وسلم does not hold my hand, فضلا, just as a favor, as a courtesy, I don't deserve it, but just as a favor, if he doesn't hold my hand, وَإِلَّا فَقُلْ, then say, يَا زَلَّةَ الْقَدَمِ, oh, how stumbled my feet is, or how slipped my feet is. This is just an expression to show how lost I am, or how heavy my loss is. It's like just saying, يَا خَسْرَتِي, Jamil, يَا زَلَّةَ الْقَدَمِ. Zalla is a slip, to stumble, al-qadam, your feet. Zallat al-qadam, it also used to mean just khata, it used to mean sin. So if Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam doesn't hold my hand in the hereafter as courtesy, just as a favor from him, then I have lost completely. Then he says, حاشاه أن يحرم الراجي مكارمه أو يرجع الجار منه غير محترم. He says, حاشاه, it is not of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it is not of him. حاشاه, it is not of him. أن يحرم الراجي مكارمه, for the one that requests the makruma of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the one that requests the generosity of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it is not of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to deny such a person. Ar-raji ay alladhi yarju, at the al here is al الموصولية بمعنى الذي. Of course we know that إذا دخل على الاسم الفاعل أو they say basically إذا دخل على الوصف الصريح فهو موصولية. So we say الراجي بمعنى الذي يرجو مكارمه بمعنى الذي يرجو مكرمة من النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. Anybody who comes to Rasulullah صلى الله عليه وسلم seeking his generosity, it is not of Rasulullah to deny such a person. أو يرجع الجار منه غير محترم, or الجار منه, the one that is seeking the protection of Rasulullah. Anybody seeking the assistance of Rasulullah صلى الله عليه وسلم, that is al-jar, not just a matter of neighbor. I think we've seen something to do with it. Let me see. In Nabiyat, that will be in chapter, that is chapter 5. We have ما سامني الدهر ضيما واستجرت به إلا ونلت جوارا منه لم يضم إلا ونلت جوارا. That is coming from the word jiwar. Jiwar بمعنى protection, assistance. So he says أو يرجع الجار منه, the one that comes to Rasulullah to seek assistance, to seek protection, he does not return from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam غير محترم, without being respected and giving what he requests for. And then he says ومنذ ألزمت أفكاري مدائحه وجدته لخلاصي خير ملتزم. Says since when I restricted my thoughts to the praises of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, ألزمت أفكاري, I made my thoughts aligned to the praises of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Since I did that, وجدته لخلاصي خير ملتزم, I find Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in my salvation the best of companions. Multazim, ay sahib, somebody who is close to you. I find him to be the best in seeking my rescue, seeking my salvation. وَلَنْ يَفُوتَ الْغِنَى مِنْهُ يَدًا تَرِبَتْ إِنَّ الْحَيَا يَنْبِتُ الْأَزْهَارَ فِي الْإِقَمِ. He says, وَلَنْ يَفُوتَ الْغِنَى, the wealth would not miss yadan taribat, a hand that is poor. When we say taribat yadun, you mean the hand has touched sand. When the hand has touched sand, that is a poor person. So yadan taribat lan yafutaha al-gina. Very poor, you can be the most poorest. When you come to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, lan yafutaka al-gina, you will not miss out of his wealth. It says inna al-haya, indeed al-haya بمعنى المطر الغزير, الغيث, الغيث أو المطر الغزير بمعنى heavy rain, heavy rainfall, heavy downpour. It says inna al-haya, indeed the heavy downpour, yumbitu al-azhara, I think I read it yumbitu, afwan, yumbitu al-azhara fil ikami. This heavy rainfall, it causes flowers to grow in the ikam. Ikam is the plural of, not just plural. You know, in the Arabia we say jamu ismu jam'in jinsi. I think that is how we call it in Arabia. And in the species name, when we mention ikam is a plural. Like the way we say bakar, the way we say ibl, the bakar, we have words like that. Then we add ta marbutu to them to make them singular. So the singular we say akamatun, like the way we say bakaratun. So when we say al-akamatu, bimana al-makan al-murtafa, highlands. Al-rabwa, we saw rabwa before. Nabtu ruba, where we saw rabwa, we said highlands. So a highland, those high places, when it rains, of course the rain will all drain down to the floor, and those down part gets to grow flowers and all that. But on top of the mountains, you don't find those flowers growing because water doesn't stop there. But when the rain is heavy, then they also benefit. So he compares Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as such a downpour, where even the places that we think flowers will not grow gets their own portion to also grow. So he compares Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam with al-matar al-ghazir al-qayth yani. Then he says, "Walam urid zaharat ad-dunya." I did not seek the flowers of this dunya. Zahara huna, he is comparing it with mal wajah, wealth and virtue and all that of this world. Says, I did not seek that. I do not seek that in my praising Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Says, وَلَمْ أُرِدْ زَهْرَةَ الدُّنْيَا الَّتِي اقْتَطَفَتْ يَدَى زُهَيْرٍ بِمَا أَثْنَى عَلَى هِرَمِ. Of course, this word hiram, you find it somewhere harimu. you find it somewhere hiramu, you find it somewhere harimu, like that. They come like that. But then basically, you find a nuskha ala hiramu, ala hirami, afwan. You find a nuskha ala harimu, ala harimi. So the nuskha, they come like that. The ha, sometimes you find it fatha, the ra, sometimes you find it kasra. The name is one that I have not seen consensus on. So Imam Busiri finally tells us that I did not seek the flowers of this world which Zuhair's hand plucked. How did he pluck it? He plucked it because Bima Athna ala Harami, due to what he praised Haram or Hiram for. Zuhair ibn Abi Sulma, the poet who is in the Mu'allaqa, Zuhair ibn Abi Sulma used to praise this Hiram or Harim or whatever the name is. The name comes Haram ibn Sanan ibn Harithat al-Muzni. Or you say Hiram ibn Sanan ibn Harithat al-Muzni. This Zuhair ibn Abu Salima used to praise this person, and he will give him money. So this Imam Busiri is saying that he is not like Zuhair, who will go praising because of the flowers of this world to be able to pluck it. He doesn't do that. So he is praising Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What is it? للتوسل بالنبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. This brings us to the ending of the الفصل التاسع في التوسل بالنبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. Inshallah, we look next at the الفصل العاشر, and I think that will bring us to the end of the بردة المديح المباركة. May Allah grant us the understanding. May Allah grant us the love of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. May Allah grant us whatever that our heart desires in this dunya wal akhirah. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما يا رب العالمين يا رب موسى وهارون وعيسى محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. أكرمنا بقوة الحفظ والفهم والمعرفة والحكمة. آمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.